Flyers relieve Craig Berube of his duties. They're going to be looking for a new head coach this offseason after Ron Hextall on Wednesday held his press conference and was also on 97.3 ESPN FM, said he did not have his mind made up. He doesn't work that way, doesn't operate that way. 2 days later, he did make up his mind, and Craig Berube is out of a job. Dave Isaac, our Flyers insider, 97.3 ESPN.com and CourierPostOnline.com, joins us now for his take on what happened today. Dave, how are you?
I'm all right. 3 times in 1 week. You guys must like me or something.
Yeah, gee, we're getting sick of you. No, man, I'm just kidding. All right, so Berube gets canned today. I mean, what was the difference between Wednesday and today? I mean, did Hextall really need 2 extra days, 48 hours to sleep on things? Or, I mean, was his mind made up all along?
I agree. I don't know what could have changed between Wednesday afternoon and Thursday night when he claims he made the decision. I mean, he said, you know, he had to look at everything, but I can't imagine that he was looking at the tape from, games from last season or something like that. I mean, what he said made sense was that the bottom line came down to Craig Berube not getting enough out of this team. I think, you know, when you look at them making the playoffs last year, that's certainly an argument that holds a little bit of validity. But why did it take so long to come to that conclusion? I'm not really sure. But, after all the speculation and weeks here, we finally are. The Flyers are looking for a new guy.
So that to you, Dave, was really something that sealed his fate, was not being able to get the most out of some of his players? Because I also know you point to their road record, which is awful, just abysmal record on the road. Those are the type of things that really sealed Berube's fate?
Yeah, I really think it all comes down to missing the playoffs. If this team were still playing, if they were in a playoff spot, even if it was a one and done in the first round, I think he would still be, standing behind the bench come October, for the season opener next season. But instead, they're going to have their third head coach in 3 seasons for an opening night. It's just the way that it works when teams don't make the playoffs.
Yeah, Flyers really had such a slow start to the season. I mean, some of the guys throughout the season would take some nights off during the year. Is that on Berube? I mean, do the Flyers now need a guy to come in here and kind of whip these guys in shape? Does that fall on Berube?
Well, here's the interesting thing, is when the players talked about Berube, they classified him as a player's coach. And I wish if I could go back in time to a few days ago, ask them to clarify what that means, because typically that means a coach kind of lets the players, not run the show, but, they have a little bit of a longer leash. And that seems counterintuitive to what the Flyers have said about Berube, which is that he employs this tough love approach. Jake Voracek, was one of the guys that said, he's a player's coach and I want him back. And he's probably also the player who had the biggest voice in saying, Berube's been really, really hard on me. And, obviously he was in the scoring race all season long. So I don't get how you can be both a player's coach and be as tough on them as Berube was. But that seems to have been the case.
Yeah, that was my next question, is how do you think some of the players feel about this? I mean, the relationships he had with LeCavalier and some of the other players, very rocky at times. I mean, was there any influence, in your opinion, maybe behind closed doors from the players?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it seemed pretty genuine the way that they were talking about him, that they do want him back, or that they did want him back. I guess it was all Ron Hextall kind of putting it all on himself. I mean, he said today that he didn't even ask the players, for their opinions. He said he didn't really know what to think of what they thought of Berube, but he didn't really ask them. So that means, A, he put this basically all on himself, and B, I think he kind of knew what he was doing even Wednesday.
All right, so what's next? I mean, who are some of the candidates out there? I know some guys are still coaching. I know Mike Babcock's name has been thrown out there. Tom McClellan's name has been thrown out there. Terry Murray's a guy with the Phantoms and the Miners. Also on the list probably. Who are some of the candidates out there for this job?
Yeah, you named a couple of them there. But also out in Arizona. I think Tim McClellan and Babcock are a good place to start. Obviously, Babcock is the only one of those three, actively coaching this season. The other two have been eliminated from the playoffs. They didn't make it, just like the Flyers, but all three are still employed by their respective teams. So, I asked Ron Hextall about that. I said, that's got to, come into play with your search, right? And he said, well, yeah, it does, which is why, he said he's not going to make a quick decision here. He's going to wait weeks, he said, to see who's out there and see what other teams kind of clear house. You don't know how long the Detroit Red Wings are going to go in the playoffs, but Berube said that he'd like to have a coach in place by the draft. And I don't see Detroit going all that far in the playoffs, but I guess if they were to absolutely run the table and go to the Stanley Cup Finals, that would give him pretty limited time to, talk to Babcock after his season is complete. I assume he's not gonna, start a circus and talking to other teams while the Red Wings are still active. So it'll be interesting. I mean, I think that their next coach is employed by a team right now. I don't think there are some names out there that didn't coach this season. John Tortorella's seen his name thrown out there is absolutely ridiculous. There's no way that he comes here. Dan Bilesma, perhaps just because of his system, but then again, Ron Hextall says that he didn't have a problem with Craig Berube's system. So I think that of the candidates that are most likely, one of those guys has still yet to be fired.
Dave Isaac, our Flyers insider, 97.3 ESPN.com, 97.3 ESPN FM. Is this an attractive job? I mean, you have a job like Toronto open. Maybe their GM and coach could be the same guy. Buffalo, that job's open. They're going to have the top pick most likely. And then you get to the Flyers and maybe some other openings like you mentioned with teams in the playoffs. Is this an attractive job?
Well, I don't know about most likely for Buffalo. Here's the thing. They have a 20% shot at that number one pick. And,
okay.
And you can just, equate number one pick and Connor McDavid as the same thing, because whoever's getting that number one pick, they ain't trading it. The Flyers have a 6.5% chance. Imagine, Monday when they're all doom and gloom. They didn't make the playoffs. They're talking about the players' exit interviews. And Saturday night, and I know that this is a very small shot here, but you could have this team with a 6.5% chance. If their ping pong ball comes up and they're taking Connor McDavid, all of a sudden Ron Hextall doesn't have to do a lot of work. There are
right.
candidates banging down his door to say, hey, I need this job. I want this job. I want to come in here. All of a sudden the sell is on Hextall instead of on the coach. So there's something to be said for the draft lottery too, I think, in regards to the coaching search. And again, Buffalo's only 20% for all the, I don't want to say hard, but work that they did this season to tank. Their percentage is 20 and the Flyers 6.5, and they actually tried to make the playoffs. So I think that those two things, there's a correlation between the two of them. So there's going to be a certain factor that tomorrow night plays into it too.
Yeah, I guess roster-wise, do you think this job is an attractive job when you compare it to some of the other openings out there?
That's the thing. I mean, what does firing Craig Berube really do? How many problems does that really solve? You still have Vinny Lecavalier on your roster who, he only got like 3 games at the center position this year, but you can tell he's not very fast. He has trouble getting up and down the ice. He's not really a great back checker. You've got Sean Couturier, who's been in the league for 4 years now, and Ron Hextall's talking about, well, he's only 22 years old. True, but he's played 4 seasons worth of hockey, and 2 of those seasons came with playoffs. Does getting a new coach in here solve, his offensive, I don't want to say inabilities, because the Flyers believe that he has the ability and just hasn't lived up to that potential yet. There's a lot of things on this roster that don't get fixed just by having a different coach. And sure, seeing the names Claude Giroux and Jake Voracek on it, if you're a coach looking at the Flyers saying, do I really want to work here? Yeah, that is attractive. But when you look at their defense, I mean, if they, I should say when they, because they think they are going to re-sign Michael Del Zotto. When they do that, they're going to have 8 defensemen on one-way contracts. That's still a big mess, what you have back there on the blue line. So up front that make it really attractive. But outside of that, real big attractive spot to come to is the rate at which they turn over coaches here.
Dave Isaac, our Flyers insider, 97.3 ESPN FM, Flyers reporter for the Courier-Post. The question that everybody wants to know, whenever there's a Flyers vacancy, everybody's so afraid that they're just going to, keep it inside the organization, go with a guy inside their comfort zone. But is it in the team's best interest to go outside of their comfort zone and outside of the organization? I guess mainly avoiding a guy like Terry Murray with Flyer ties.
I think they will go outside of their comfort zone there and get somebody that's not really affiliated with the organization. I think that would be their hope. That's what they would like to do. Ron Hextall said that won't disqualify anybody if they do have past ties to the Flyers. That wouldn't disqualify them from being a legitimate candidate. But I really do think that the next coach has not worked with the Flyers in the past.
All right, we'll see what happens. Dave Isaac will be all over it. Courier-Post online as well as 973ESPN.com. Dave, thanks as always, man. Enjoy the weekend.
Yeah, thanks a lot.